Hi, everybody. This is Jose Palomino again with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. And I've been talking a bit about this whole issue of a competitive edge, this whole dynamic of a competitive edge. What does that really mean? And we touched on it. It's how you win. But it really comes down to is how you win because it's how you stand apart, how you're different than in some meaningful way to your best customers than your competitors. That's what gives you the edge. It's how you win because people would rather do business with you. It's how you win because people actually want to learn more about what you have to offer, because something about how you present it, what you do, whether it's through your marketing, through your sales, on your website, in your reputation, however you've done it, you've established something that's meaningfully different. Now, this is really important because otherwise you're just table stakes on every dimension, and people view you and your company and your offering as one of the alternatives. And that's good. You're in business, but you're not going to grow that way. So we tackled a value proposition, which is really what this gets to the heart of, is one of the four things you have to do to actually establish a competitive edge, to leverage a competitive edge. And then we talked about value delivery. And today we're going to talk a little bit about marketing for opportunities. And the context of this is really B2B, right? So you're selling what we would call a considered purchase. It's something a little bigger. It's something that is not something that somebody can transactionally buy. It's not like buying a couple of whiteboard markers for the office whiteboard. It's buying a new whiteboard system for all the conference rooms in our office, for example, and having to shop around for that. It's buying a projector or hiring an AV company to set up some like James Bond, like lowering the screen and the projector comes on and the screen comes down. Whatever it is, it's complex. So if you're selling something that's a little bit complex, that requires some sales process to it, you need to create at-bats or opportunities that are going to make people lean in and want to do business with you. They have to create an awareness of who you are and what your company is. So there's this general thing, and you've heard it, is branding. And if you're in a mid-market or a small company and thinking, well, I'm not going to run TV ads, I can't afford billboards, what do I do? First thing you have to do is to make sure that your messaging is tight, that you've taken that value proposition idea, that which sets you apart, that which is the reason somebody should buy X from you at Y price, and you've given it some language. And again, you're saying, well, I'm not a professional copywriter, I'm not a webmaster or whatever, and that's fine. And you can hire those people, but you need to have a clear idea of what it is, because your marketing for opportunities is completely dependent on your ability to have a message that's interesting, a message that calls out your difference, and this is critical in B2B, a message that's not overly complex. If you have to explain a lot of things with footnotes, and they need to scroll 3 pages down to understand what is it you do. And I check out websites, B2B service providers and product providers all the time. And at times I'm on the 3rd page trying to figure out what is it you do exactly. So simple language is really powerful. It helps people understand the category you're in. So if you do, for example, construction services for commercial real estate, build office buildings, office parks, things like that, then say that. Somewhere say we are commercial space construction specialist. And then you can say what you do differently. You can add to that. You can say that we, basically we specialize in speed. We turn it around much more quickly. You're more cost effective, whatever that is. And again, the idea is that somebody should get what category you belong in easily without straining their brain, and then what sets you apart in that category. Now, I know some of you might be listening and say, well, gee, I don't want to sound like everybody else, and that's fine. But understand, somebody looking for something in the category is looking for something in the category. So if you start trying to sound like, well, we're not a sales training organization, we're a revenue enhancement acceleration company, people aren't going to understand what that means. So you have to say sales training with a focus on revenue acceleration. That starts sounding different. What does that mean? That's a good what do you mean? Or what does it mean? Because somebody's going to lean in. And that's what you want. You want the lean in. Then you have to tell your story in terms of the problem that you're solving. It's really critical that you align with the problem that your best customer is encountering. And it's got to be a problem with at least for some parts of that target market you're aiming for, there will be urgency to it. So if you sell commercial refrigerators, for example, whatever your distinctive is, it's important that you deal with what is the problem. Is it, do you need to install a new refrigerator or a replacement refrigerator? Is it for restaurants? Is it for other kind of food service operations? Whatever that is, you have to make that clear so they understand how it applies, how it would work, and what the problem is that you're solving. Are you tired of your refrigerator costing you so much more in electricity than you think it should? That's a powerful thought if you have a more energy efficient refrigerator, and so on. So you have to build this idea that you understand the problem they're living in language that they would use. I always use the bar room or the bar with my friend test. Imagine your best customer sharing a beer with a friend from college or just a neighborhood friend at the end of a long week, a long day of work on a Friday. How would they tell their friend about the problems they're dealing with when the friend says, hey, how's it going? Well, man, these electric bills are killing me. Or man, this construction project is taking forever. That language, if you can pick up on it, you can map to it. Say, tired of construction projects that take forever? And all of a sudden you have a hook of interest. And it tells them that you understand their problem, their world, who they are, and what they're suffering with. And then, and only then, can you start telling them in a relevant way, does your problem look like this? Have you tried these things? And then finally, this is how we help people solve that problem. First of all, this is the problem we solve. You restate that. And then how you go about doing it. And the how is not as important as the fact that you are the solution to the problem. But in B2B, the how has to be brought into the conversation some. So you could argue and say, well, listen, we put holes in walls. What does it matter to you what type of drill we use, what our procedure methodology is? If you want 14 holes in that wall, we put those 14 holes in there. And there's a truth to that. We put the holes where you need them. Simple. But it's when you explain the how that you gain something else. You gain credibility. So your marketing at the highest level has to describe their problem in language they understand, the fact that you solve it, and the how enough for them to say, boy, these people probably really know what they're talking about. Now in B2B, you also want to look at content on a longer time cycle. In other words, you have to be blogging, doing podcasts like this one, doing other video assets. I have a client that does that sells a particular type of machine, and they heavily committed to video, 3D animation renderings of the machine in operation, actual video of the machine in operation. And it helped answer questions that people had before they even knew that they wanted to engage with them. So they often would talk to a prospect that says, oh yeah, I've been checking out your videos for the last 2 years. And when we were ready to source an item of equipment like in your category, because again, they understood the category now, that's the problem that they addressed, and they understood how they solved the problem. I wanted to talk to you. So by using content, you establish a platform where people are actually going to be interested in you and knowledgeable about you. Now, this is not just an SEO thing to get found on Google and so on. I'm talking about real human beings, real buyers, getting familiar with what you're about so that they're interested in what you're doing, so that when they have the need or they actually see their need in your content, there's a greater propensity for them to want to talk to you. And then, of course, there are things you can create to trigger interest, trigger response, make it engaging. And that's, of course, assets like whether it's white papers, reports, maybe some sort of training that you make available to them just for the cost of an email, for example. Other things could be, webinars, live conferences, roundtables, other events that let people touch base with you. Now, if you're in an industry which does a lot of trade shows, and of course, that's been a little tougher in the last 2 years, but as that gets back in play, doesn't mean you have to spend $50,000 on a new booth. Maybe you forego the booth, but you show up and you make sure you contact people who are going to be there and let them know that you're going to be there and connect with them there. And again, if they've been seeing your content, if they understand what you do, and how you do it and how you do it uniquely. Again, I just won't repeat everything I talked about in the prior episode around value proposition. But if you think about that, how you bring that into everything you talk about, everything you do, you're repeating this theme about we do this and we do it differently because solving this problem you may have, and this is why we're a credible alternative to that. If you do that, you'll start seeing lead flow come in. Now, there's many other things you can do very specifically to create leads, but this is the bedrock foundation that you should have. And I'd like to hear from you. So by all means, drop a comment, send me an email directly if you have some ideas about this is what I do to get lead flow. And just like to, maybe we'll do a little compendium episode with some suggestions from you, our listeners. So really value you, and hope this finds you in a good place as we go into the new year. And most of all, just think about it this way. Your competitive edge is that which sets you apart in a meaningful way to your best customer. Building that out as your value proposition. Then your marketing materials have to carry that message. And as we talked about the last episode, your value delivery, your organization has to deliver on those promises. And next, we'll talk about how your sales process has to actually pay it off, because in B2B, almost everything you do has to get into, at some point, if it's a big ticket item, it's going to get into a sales conversation that has to be executed exceedingly well to confirm what people hope is true about you based on everything else you've done. So with that, to your success as always, and meet you on the other side with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. If you like this episode and if you like the series, make sure you subscribe below. And also, if you liked it, please do review it. When people are looking for something exciting to listen to, especially the kind of content we're bringing, which is practical insights for B2B companies, this is a place and a free resource that they can take advantage of. Let them know about it with your review. So subscribe, review, enjoy. Thanks again.